You're listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast with Mike Chappell and Dave Griffiths.
Hello and welcome to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. I'm Matt Adams. Dave Griffiths is out this week, but we do have our very own Mike Chappell here. We got plenty of stuff to talk about. There was some thought that we would never learn what happened to Braden Smith in the offseason or at the end of the season last year. Now we know, so we're going to talk about that. It is mock draft season. We are just about 2 weeks away from the NFL draft, which will be on April the 24th. And so we're going to look at, some of the mock drafts and some of the guys that people say the Colts might draft or might not draft. Mike said he did some homework this week, so I hope that he did because we do have a podcast to do here. But first, we wanted to start, Mike, with Braden Smith. Big article out of the Indianapolis Star from Joel Erickson. You might have seen him on the Colts Blue Zone with First and Joel. Helps us out. Excellent sports reporter here in the market. Kind of got the exclusive with Braden and his wife. And we discovered, he started 12 games last year. Correct. And then he was out the last 5, I believe.
He was placed on a reserve illness
list. You're right. And it was a non-football injury type of deal. It was a personal situation. I didn't think that we would necessarily ever learn what that was, but that was going to be up to Braden and his family, obviously. And so we kind of know what happened with Braden there. And you wrote an article sort of breaking down what Joel broke down on that. So kind of walk us through what happened there with Braden Smith.
Yeah, first of all, this was Braden and his wife, Courtney, reaching out, and they wanted to get their story out. Not, it's yes, we were all wondering what it was, and all we ever got was personal issues. And that's, as a journalist, you want more, but in this area, you leave it alone. Personal issues, and you knew it was something that was really significant for him to miss his time. And when we talked to Chris Ballard at the Combine, he said he's in a good spot. They redid his contract, and then Braden and his wife reached out through the Colts to Joel. And let me say, first of all, if you haven't read the story, read it.
It's definitely worth reading. It's very good.
For two things. One, the content. And if the Colts have had a phrase, and again, they're kicking a stigma, which is incredibly significant. Kudos to the Irsay family for this. And one of the shirts they put is like, it's okay to not be okay. And if you have issues, reach out. And that's what they've done. And that's what, Braden did. They helped Braden through this, but it was OCD. And initially the team helped him when he was still playing last year. They got him on the medication through his doctors that he needed, therapy. And it just wasn't working. It just wasn't doing anything for him. And he reached the point that with his wife, he mentioned that he might retire, and she knew that was the first really alarm bell, because she knows how much football means to her husband. But things just got worse and worse. And again, read the story to get all those details. But it got to the point where she told him that there are options, and she urged him to go to a health facility in Colorado. And because it got to the point that the article mentioned she changed the combination on their safe at home.
She was worried about the safety of him and her and the family
with their firearms.
Right.
And she said that she was concerned at times leaving him alone with their 10-month-old son Wyatt. So they went to the Colorado. He went to the facility, stayed for 48 days, did whatever you do with those and the medication, and they just didn't really get the results they wanted. He was diagnosed with severe OCD, and while he was there at the end, he had heard about a alternative therapy, which involves 2 psychedelic drugs that are not I think they're called Schedule 1 drugs.
Right, not approved for use here in the U.S.
They're illegal in the United States. He went to Mexico, got this treatment, and it just has helped. And we were talking before the air. His OCD, which was severe, was religion related. I'll screw up the name, but it just was extreme to where anything he did in his eyes morally wasn't good enough.
Right. It fell shy of perfection.
Right.
And so because of that, he needed to punish himself,
Right.
essentially, for any thought, any action that he did. And he likened it, I believe, to, you always read stories of kids back in the 50s and 60s and earlier, getting their hands slapped with a ruler by the old school marm. And it was kind of that idea.
Right. Yeah. And at one point he said it got to where he was not far from putting, as he said, a bullet in his head. That's when you obviously know that it's time, that you can't handle what you're going through. So again, through the early stages of this last year, we all wanted to know what it was, and now when you see what it was, you understand the magnitude of what he went through and is going through. He still has OCD.
Right. He says it's not controlling him like it was before.
It doesn't disrupt his life. It went from severe to mild, but you still deal with it, and he will deal with this, I assume, the rest of his life, like addictions. You're never through it. You're dealing with it. So good for him. He's one of the better guys we've dealt with. What was he? Second round draft pick in 2018. He's been their right tackle. I still remember when they drafted him, and we always get these guys on the phone for a conference call, and we got Braden. It was one of the best interviews we've had with him because he's a very quiet, introverted guy. But we got him at was it Texas A&M? I can't think where his wife went to school. Texas A&M or Auburn. She was a top level softball player, and we got him at her softball game. And I think the national anthem had just ended or whatever, and he was great. He was really open and effusive and personable. And with the Colts, he's been not standoffish at all, but a very quiet guy. You see him walk through the locker room. He's just big guy. He's 6'5" or whatever, and 320, 30, whatever. He's just a big guy. But the whole thing through all of this is he seems to be in a very good place in his life. That's number one. You get your life together. You've got a wife and a now 14 or 15-month-old son. And in football is important to him. He sort of said it was important to get back to be around people doing what he wants to do, because and he and his wife Courtney, again, moving forward, they want to help players who may have these issues.
Yeah, it wasn't just they didn't just say this. They didn't just come out and say these things because, well, now everybody can know why Braden was out. They did it because they felt like he is not the only person. Obviously, because he went to a treatment facility where this has been a problem for other people. This is not
other NFL players as well.
Other NFL players as well. And so this was a way for them to come out and bring this issue to the forefront, and also to let people know who may not want to come out and get in front of it and talk about it. No, wow, well, this worked for this guy, and maybe this will work for me.
Again, because a lot of us don't. I can't relate to OCD. I can't. When I have bad days, they're just bad days. I'm not depressed. I'm not sitting in the dark. So you don't understand. You can't have empathy if you really haven't been through it. So what they've done, and that's, again, I go back to what the Colts do with the kicking the stigma. It's such a great outreach because people look at these athletes, whether it's football, basketball, whatever, you think these guys have got it made.
Yeah, they're supermen, right? They don't have any problems. They got all the money in the world.
Probably made $60, $70 million, $80 million in his career. What's his problems? Well, no, everybody has problems. Whether you're working at the village pantry or whatever, or you're a big star in the NFL, you have problems. So, like you said, I think this was reaching out, saying we went through this, and this is how we did it. They're not saying this is how you go through it,
and it's not saying that this is a solution that's going to work for everybody. But they're saying that there are things that can help.
But it starts with reaching out,
and you've got to reach out to do it first.
And the story mentioned how he did through the Colts with David Thornton, who, I tell you, if you don't know who David Thornton is, one, he was one of the better linebackers they've had here. And then he went on to, was it Tennessee?
I think he went to Tennessee. Yeah.
But what he does as a player conduit to the community and everything, it's amazing. I ran into at the combine. I ran into Marcus Pollard, former tight end, and that's what he does in Jacksonville.
Oh, really?
And when
That's
you get
cool.
those guys who can relate to players and say, if you need something, I remember when Sam Ellinger's brother passed away when Sam just got here for rookie minicamp, I thought.
Oh, yeah.
And David Thornton was one that sort of helped him through that. So it's every team has that guy. I doubt they have people as good as David Thornton or Marcus Pollard. But I just think and again, before I forget, I just want to mention with Joel, great for him to get the story it was. But what was important, and this is from a journalist standpoint, Joel showed you how you can the proper way to do this story is let Braden and Courtney tell their story
Right.
and get the facts in. And it was it was written very well. It really was. But it just showed that you can write this kind of a story and get out of the way. You're not part of the story.
Yeah, and it's not about they mentioned he missed some games, and they did
Right.
mention how he renegotiated his contract.
Right.
But in a lot of sports framing, that could have been the focus.
And it was like the last section of it.
Right, of the piece. And it was like, oh, by the way, also there's some football things involved.
Right. And there is football things involved. Because, with him coming back, it does alleviate some issues on the offensive line. It does. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. He's a good player. Is he a Pro Bowl player? On the fringe, but he's a good player, has been a good player. And with him being in a good place, and we'll talk to him at some point in the offseason. We get access in 2 weeks. I think it's in 2 weeks with our offseason work that starts April 21st. At some point, we'll talk to him. I'm not sure he'll delve into all of this again.
Yeah, probably not. He's probably said his piece.
Right.
But he might still want to advocate a little bit too.
Without all the details.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And again, I hope people don't look negatively that he had to go to Mexico to get these 2 psychedelic drugs and all this stuff. It's not for everybody. And one thing that Courtney pointed out is they footed the bill for this, for these for the Mexico things, because it's not covered by insurance.
No, of course it's not.
But again, the bottom line is great job by Joel, but kudos to Braden and Courtney for sharing a very, very personal.
Yeah, this was a super personal story about what. I mean, you're talking the gun safe thing,
right?
Going to the clinic, it not helping.
Right.
Even after several weeks of treatment, they had him do like an OCD test, and he was still like almost all of the indicators he still had. So even though
that was after the initial treatment, right?
And the conventional stuff was just not working for him. So, like you said, kudos to Braden Smith on that. I know that his teammates looking forward to having him back on the line. And from the football perspective, the Colts would have faced 60% of their line being gone if Braden couldn't come back, because they'd lost Will Fries.
That's one of those, oh, by the way, parts of the story.
Exactly. And that is an oh, by the way part of the story. So, and also, the Colts for kind of accommodating and trying to help facilitate some help for him. And we hear a lot about it, kicking the stigma. It's the program, for mental health and awareness. And, they talk about it a lot. You see it on TV a lot. So it's good to see that their actions do back up kind of what they promote.
And again, when you get down to the football, they could have released him.
Mm-hmm. Could have.
They could have.
Could have not paid him either.
Right. And instead, they revised the contract, and he took a pay cut with a chance of earning back a lot of that money through incentives. And if he plays, and if he's back and he stays healthy, and he's had injury issues. Again, one of the things that helped, that sort of contributed to his problems, is he had knee surgery going into last year. So it was another thing he had to deal with. But again, the Colts stayed with him. They were supportive of him, not only during the treatment phase, but when it came to giving him, I guess, a lifeline back to the 2025 season. Again, this guy loves to play football, and it's important to him. Not as important as his health or his family, of course, but it's part of what's made him kind of what he is athletically, certainly. So I'm curious how it's going to be going forward. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the locker room and just welcoming him back, because again, you get to know these guys. When you see them in the locker room, you just acknowledge them, and they say hi to you. So I'm looking forward to seeing Braden in a few weeks.
Yeah, and he is an important person in the
Right.
clubhouse as well. You
Right.
know, in the locker room. I guess I should say clubhouse would be more baseball.
Right.
But so anyway, good on Braden Smith. It again, I will put a link to Joel's story down in the podcast description. Definitely worth checking out there in the Indy Star. Now we're going to turn to a little bit of a football thing, and I didn't tell you we are going to do this, chap, but we do have the new numbers for our free agents this year, at least what they think they're going to be. They're up on the screen now.
I only paid attention to one because there was a little bit of hubbub over it.
Yes, yeah. And I just, because I was thinking about number 17 for Daniel Jones, and I thought, well, let's see. Philip Rivers wore that number. Austin Collie wore that number. Griff Whalen also.
Hunter Smith, was he 17?
Yep, Hunter Smith.
Yep.
Chris Gardocki also. I mean, like, there's some notable 17s in there.
Yep.
Number 38 will be Corey Ballantyne. That was Eugene Daniel was the first one that popped into my head.
Whenever we're out there training camp or OTAs, and I see numbers, I don't see I don't know who the guy is that necessarily, but it flashes back to guys that I covered. Whenever I see 54, I think of Jeff Harrod and things like that. So, but it is kind of cool.
Tyrone Poole also wore 38. He was a big free agent acquisition early in Manning's career.
Corner, yep.
Number 27, that would be Cam Bynum. And Xavier Rhodes had that number. Tim Jennings, I don't remember. He was a defensive back for the Colts.
Went on to the Bears and was I think he was a Pro Bowler.
Yeah, really good player for the Bears. Jacob Lacey, also a cornerback for the Colts. Cliff Gross, do you remember that name?
Yes, running back.
Big old running back for the Colts. And then Trey Sermon, number 27. So do you think he bought it from him, or do you just think he doesn't need it anymore?
He probably doesn't need it anymore.
Probably doesn't need it anymore. Travarius Ward will be number 21. And that's been a pretty prominent number for the Colts. They've had some very good players at 21. Bob Sanders is there. The late Vontae Davis, I believe, wore 21. And Zach Moss and Nyheim Hines, a couple running backs in recent years that wore that. And also another running back, a notable, this would have been from the Jim Harbaugh, Marshall Faulk era, Lamont Warren. Absolutely.
One of the most defining almost plays in franchise history is when he got tripped up on 3rd and 1.
Looks like he got tripped by the air on that one, man.
Right. It was a botched play by the defensive guy who wasn't supposed to blitz. He did. There was like 3 minutes to play.
Just got him by the shoelace, man.
And if they convert, they're in the Super Bowl.
Game's over.
Unbelievable.
Yep.
It's just one play.
Number 26, that'll be Khalil Herbert, the running back for the Colts.
Kelvin Hayden.
What's that?
Kelvin Hayden.
Kelvin Hayden. That was the first one that came to mind for me. Rock Ya-Sin wore that number. Clayton Gathers, who was a pretty good player for the Colts for a while. Rodney McLeod, who we've sung the praises on of this podcast a few different times. And Lydell Mitchell, longtime Baltimore Colt.
Great player.
For the franchise. And then we finish this out with number 92. That'll be Neville Gallimore. You've got Jerry Hughes in there. You've got Chad Bratsky.
Bratsky's the one that popped in my mind.
Bratsky was the one that popped in your mind?
One of the first big free agents, I believe, by Pullian. Was that
Pullian? Yeah. That was at the beginning of the Manning's career when they kind of did their reset.
It was a massive. That's when he had to buy a defense because they were so bad.
Yeah, they were awful.
And Bratsky was here. He was their top pass rush guy for a while. Then he sort of helped school Dwight Freeney.
He was like the predecessor to kind of that group of players. A couple other guys on there. Bjorn Werner was that number. Booger McFarland, Super Bowl
key player
champion
for the Super Bowl run,
and also Dan Klecko wore that number.
He has the distinction of being in the AFC Championship game where 4 linemen scored touchdowns.
Yeah, it was crazy game.
Yeah, it was, and he had the touchdown pass for Manning. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, so I looked at some of those numbers and some of them rang a bell. So I decided, hey, let's. I wasn't going to quiz you, but I was going to just see if any of those guys rang a bell for you.
And the thing with Bynum is there was the lead up is, well, he wants number 24. Well, that's retired.
Yeah, can't
let him more.
Yeah.
And we're not going to be checking to see if they can then retire it.
Yeah.
So, pick another number. We got like another 96, probably another 90 numbers you can have. So
They'll find something.
Right. And these guys, they're very, unless they're really an established veteran who goes to another team and he can pry the number out of another player's hands for whatever. But most of these guys, just give me a number and I'll play.
Yeah. And number 17, man, Austin Collie, Griff Whalen, Phillip Rivers, Hunter Smith. I just right off the top
Right.
I thought of some of those guys. So
Yep.
that was kind of a fun little exercise. All right, now the NFL draft is coming up, as we've mentioned, in a couple of weeks, and depending upon what mock draft you look at, well, actually, a lot of the mock drafts, I would say maybe 70 to 75%, 70 to 80% of them have the Colts going tight end. Now, early in this process, it was all about Penn State's Tyler Warren. We're
Right.
certainly going to talk about him, but there is some thought now, because he is also considered like to be a top 10 draft pick. There are going to be other teams that are going to be interested in a tight end. There are going to be teams that saw what Brock Bowers did for the Raiders last season, and they're going to be like, we're going to invest a high pick in the tight end position. So especially 7, the Jets seems to be the team that is often in these mock drafts picking Warren. And so you see an increasing number of these mock drafts, and we've talked about this trend, but Colston Loveland from the University of Michigan being the guy. But let's talk a little bit first about Tyler Warren, and he is a guy out of Penn State, and he's kind of your Swiss Army knife all-around tight end guy. They moved him around in formation. Sometimes he works in the backfield. Sometimes he's an inline guy. Sometimes he's a slot guy. Sometimes he's on the outside. They ran wildcat formations with this guy.
Right.
He is probably the most all-around skilled guy who, prides himself in blocking. He can stretch the field a little bit, and he's good between the hash marks, in the middle of the field.
That's what you want. Whenever we've talked to Chris Ballard and Shane Steichen, is that tight end allows you to attack the middle of the field, which the Colts could not do or weren't able to do with the tight ends they had. And whether it's going to be Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones, you've got to have that guy. I hate to call it a release valve because he's more than that.
Right.
But to have a guy that is going to be there. I keep going back to the importance of Dallas Clark during the Manning years. Just incredible what that guy allows you to do. It opens, if you've got good guys on the outside, which the Colts will have with Pierce and Pittman and Josh Downs in there, and we'll see what Mitchell does. But they can only pay attention to one or so many guys, and that tight end sometimes is the guy that they don't forget about. But there's only so many guys you can really focus on,
and he gets free.
Right. So there was a part of Shane Steichen's playbook last year we did not see. What did the tight ends have? 39 catches?
Yeah, there were
for 467.
A bunch of tight ends who individually had more catches than the Colts.
I went back. I did the homework, and it was the fewest catches, yards, and touchdowns by Colts tight ends since 1994. I mean, that's back in the Harbaugh years. So you've got to have better. And Tyler Warren seems to be that guy. And he's one of those guys that, as you mentioned, as we get closer to the draft, he's one of those guys whose stock goes up, which means he goes up in the draft. We'll see. Again, I thought I may say it was closer to like 85% of the draft of the mocks had the Colts taken a tight end.
It's probably
one or the other.
It's a large percentage.
Right, one or the other. And what the Colts need, and again, maybe the Colts have Colston Loveland ranked as a top tight end. We don't know. So what I've always thought, and I've talked myself into, is because of what you said with maybe the Jets. I think I've seen a couple where he goes to the Saints at 9.
Yeah, there's always some variations, but in a lot of the ones, it seems like that 7 is where he ends up going.
So if that's the case, and let's say you really think that Tyler Warren is that guy. He's not Brock Bowers, but he's close.
You got to get up to 6 to get him.
And in my estimation, that's what you do, unless the Colts think there's not much of a gap between.
If the evaluation's close between those two guys,
then you stay put and you take whichever one's there.
Right.
But if you think Tyler Warren is the guy, doggone it, after missing Bowers by 2 spots last year,
Yep.
and I don't know if Ballard will tell us next week when they talk to him, but did they try to move up to get him like they tried to move up to get Malik Neighbors, which was monster moving to
Yeah.
go to, where was it, 5?
Yeah. Up there. Yep.
So it would be similar to going to 6 now to get or 5 to get Tyler Warren. What did move? What the Jets are at 7, so they'd move. Had to move to 6.
They'd want to,
which is still it's a long way to go. But if there's this much riding on this pick and it being a tight end, because as we talked about, they took care of corner, they took care of safety with the free agents, and early on, a lot of the mock drafts had the Colts taking a corner, not necessarily a safety. A few did, but now you don't have to push that. So you've allowed yourself the flexibility to go after a tight end, and the whole question, as we mentioned, is there a gap between Warren and Colston? If not, then you don't move up.
Yeah, then you don't have to worry so much about it. And unless somebody were to surprise you and take Loveland when you didn't expect them to, because their evaluation of him was also very high. But it feels like the Colts, they and every team does this to a certain extent, but they've really specialized their tight ends to where, like, this is our inline blocker guy, and this is our receiving guy, and this is the guy we'll sometimes put in the backfield. And that makes it, that comes out on film, right? When you're in a certain formation, you see a certain guy out there.
Well, Lee Cox is coming in. They're probably going to run the ball.
They're probably going to run the ball because he's a good inline blocker. If you have somebody like Warren who does have that.
That's not been by choice. It's been by.
No, it's been by necessity.
Right.
Because they just not hit on a guy that has checks all the boxes for them. And, if they were able to get Warren with some of the versatility that he's got in his skill set, is move him all over the field, put him in the backfield, put him on the end of the line, have him run block, do releases and stuff like that, put him outside if you want to.
Right.
It would really just put that Shane Steichen playbook to maximum use, I think.
And what would be interesting again is again how they feel about Warren and Colston, how they feel about the third or fourth tight end.
Yeah, because it is considered, and I didn't get into it because we've still got a couple of podcasts before we get into the draft, so we'll try to look at some of those kind of hidden gems. But the tight end group, like there are guys that you can get in the second round that I think could be very productive for you.
So let's say that they shock everyone on round 1 at 14 and stay there and get an offensive lineman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we'll talk about some of those options here.
Or a linebacker. I would be okay with that, depending on who they get.
Who's there, right?
What did you do at tight end? That's the whole thing. And if you guys are going to put your eggs in a basket of a second round tight end, fine. But if it comes back and bites you, then shame on you. So with so much riding on this season, with the quarterback growth and all that, I would try to do everything possible to enhance Richardson's growth. And yes, you can argue better protection with a tackle or a guard.
Right.
I get it. But the incredible need at tight end seems to drive you that. It's one of those where this is one of those drafts where need and best player coincide.
Right.
You need a tight end. It's a really good tight end draft. So don't overthink it.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about Colston Loveland. He's from Michigan. He was a starter there. He is, in most of the draft evaluations, he is considered to be the second best tight end in the draft, usually with a first-round projection, mid to late first round for him from most of what I see. 6'6", 248 pounds. He's got really good speed. He's got good playmaking ability, mostly used in the slot in Michigan or, used off the end line as well. Good hands, big catch radius. He's a big target, which you like there, but really considered to be more of a downfield pass catcher than he is a blocker. That is the part of his game that needs some development. So if you want that Swiss Army knife, then Tyler Warren's probably your guy. If you just really want a guy that you think can contribute to the passing game that can also maybe grow into a little bit of the run block, then Loveland's not a bad option either.
I wonder, is he closer to what a Dallas Clark was? I don't know.
Right, yeah.
Dallas Clark was never, as much as he tried, was never a very good blocker.
Yeah.
We always kind of cringed in the press box whenever Tom Moore, in one of his moments where he wanted back when he'd have Dallas Clark trying to block a defensive end. It never ended well.
Not what you want.
No.
And they do think that he would struggle with NFL edge rushers.
But it also, his numbers don't even approach Warren's because Michigan's passing game was awful.
Right. And he was their leading receiver in 9 of their 10 games, but which is good for him. But like it shows his strength of receivership because they just did not have a very good quarterback play last year. And this was also an offense that has always traditionally been the last couple seasons. Very, very run heavy.
Right. And if he comes here, he'll come to an offense that Steichen likes to use tight ends when he has tight ends he can use.
Right. And I think that's really the chicken and the egg of the whole thing with the tight end group for the Colts is, they like their guys because they can do certain things here and there.
Yeah, I don't believe that. Every time they tell me, I don't believe that.
Because if they did like their guys, they would use them more and they would feature them in the offense. And they don't do anything like that.
They don't because they can't.
Because they can't. And if they can get either Warren or Loveland here in the draft, I think that does change for them. And even if they don't get one of those two guys, there are a couple of others down the line that you can get second, third round probably that I still think could be a much better contributing factor than the current tight end group.
And again, if they have that third or fourth guy, in their room ranked high enough, then it will allow them in their mind to do something else in round one.
Right.
And you say, well, we really like this guy we can get in round two.
Because there are a couple guys, and we'll talk, but there are a few like guys that are rated either first or second in their position group that the Colts might have a chance at 14. Now, they won't have the advantage this year of a crazy number of quarterbacks being taken in the first round because it is considered to be a relatively weak quarterback class, especially compared to last year where they had all those quarterbacks go in the first round. So that's not going to repeat itself this year. But, they will still have the beneficiary to being at 14 because there's going to be like premium guys that are going to be available there. And it may not be at the position that you say tight end. Maybe those guys are gone, or maybe there is an edge rusher that they like, or maybe there's a linebacker because they have a big need at linebacker on this team. And, listen, yes, Braden Smith is coming back, and you're going to have Q there at left guard, and you've got Burney at left tackle, but, you're going to have Bortolini at center. And then right guard's kind of a
Gonzalez, he will be your projected starter.
He'd be your projected starter. And is there somebody that's going to be that you think might be better there? So, and we all know as the general manager of the Colts, Chris Ballard is always going to prioritize defensive line and offensive line. If he sees a guy there that he thinks can be a multi-year starter for that unit, a day one starter, he might be very tempted to do that. But
one thing on the tight ends, and this is where the draft really can bite you, is the one of the worst things you can do is have to chase mistakes.
Right.
They've done that at defensive end, where they got guys that they just didn't pan out, and they've been chasing their mistakes at tight end. They've drafted guys.
It's not that they have not drafted guys.
Ogletree and Jelani Woods and Cotton Ransom, and it just hasn't worked out.
Nobody's worked. Ogletree's been probably the best of the ones that they've got because he's got some all around. He's got some receiving. He's got some blocking, but he's not a featured player in the offense. It's not like people strike fear in the hearts of Drew Ogletree's on lining up on the other side of the ball.
And again, they let Granson. They let him go without much attempt, if any, to get him back. And I can't remember where he's.
I think he went to Philly.
Okay, so that when you're chasing mistakes, if you hit on one of those guys, and Jelani Woods, you don't know.
Yeah, and again, he could come next year and be some dynamic tight end player that we've never seen before, but you can't bank on that because all these, unfortunately, and it's not his fault, but unfortunately for the last couple seasons, all he's done is be an injured guy on the IR.
So when that happens, then you've got to continue to address that position. So, but no, it's going to be really interesting because there are other options, and there probably will be players available at 14 at positions who may have in most people's minds, even the Colts perhaps, that are ranked higher. Let's say Tyler Warren falls to him at 14. there very well could be a corner, an offensive lineman,
Right.
a linebacker ranked higher.
Like this is the top cornerback in the draft, or it wouldn't
Right.
be because that'd be Travis Hunter, but
Right.
you know what I'm saying? This is the best guy that's available
Right.
here, but we're taking Tyler Warren
Right.
because that is where the need trumps, and you're
Right.
still getting a good,
It's not like you're
player.
reaching into the third round to
Right.
get a guy.
Right. You're not drafting a quarterback in the first round that somebody projected as a day 3
Right.
pick or something
Right.
like that. So let us some of these other names that I'm going to mention here. These are all offensive linemen, and let's start out with Will Campbell, and he is out. That is Braden Smith, not Will Campbell. There we go. There's Will Campbell. He's out of LSU, and he has a projection as kind of the top-rated tackle in the draft. But there's kind of an asterisk near that. He's 6'6", 319 pounds. In most draft evaluations, he is considered to be the top tackle in the draft. I should also note that the Athletics The Beast came out today. That is Dane Brugler's insanely detailed draft guide. Great resource if you subscribe to the Athletic and the New York Times. But he wrote this of Campbell. His skill set is reminiscent of a more powerful version of Colts left tackle Bernard Ryman, although some NFL teams project him best as an interior blocker.
That's one thing you always have to watch is it seems like most of these tackles in this draft, he can be a pretty good guard in the NFL.
Yeah, it's almost endemic to this draft when it comes to the tackles that are here. And you guys talked about, I know Joe Hopkins often mentioned about arm size, arm length for the offensive tackles. And that is usually the thing that the draft evaluators don't like about a certain
Short
player
arms.
is their arms don't have an ideal length to kind of be able to reach out there on the edge and stop guys. So that's interesting. I also pulled, I'm going to put this up as a full screen graphic here. I pulled, we like our relative athletic score. So for Will Campbell, it's almost a 10. It's a 9.89. He is an elite athlete at his position. Big starter there for LSU. And like I said, considered to be a pretty good option for just about any team. I think there's no argument that he's going to be a starter in the league. The question will be, is he going to be able to be a starter on your outside? Or are you going to have to kick him in to the interior, or are you going to have to put him in maybe at a right tackle as opposed to left tackle?
And it's probably unlikely that he'll be there at 14.
And he's probably not going to be there at 14. But because of the way the draft goes, if it does go at 14, is that an irresistible, because you always hear, is it Mel Kiper Jr., the value pick, because that would be an insane value, because he's probably a top 5, top 10 player in the draft. To get him at 14 would be an exceptional premium that you would get from that pick.
And that's why I say if they would do that,
if
they take Jihad Campbell. If you do that, the linebacker from LSU also?
Jihad Campbell, he's from Bama.
Okay. If you do that, okay. As long as in round 2 you get it, as long as you take care of the tight end to your satisfaction. But no one should be surprised if they go O-line. I think at the owners' meetings, Chris Ballard said something like, when you guys go to sleep, you're dreaming about whatever you're dreaming about. I'm dreaming about offensive linemen.
And we believe it.
And it will be on my headstone that I loved offensive linemen.
Yeah. Another one that we've seen off and on through the draft process and the mocks for the Colts is Armand Membu from Missouri. I know you've mentioned him a couple of times on the podcast. 6'4", 332 pounds, explosive, agile. He is rated as the number 2 tackle. He's also durable, which is really nice. Started 30 games in a row in college. Only played at right tackle. And I think the reason that bells go off for this guy is there was some uncertainty, especially earlier, about Braden Smith's status. The Colts are going to eventually need another right tackle. This guy has pretty much played exclusively there.
Let's say Braden comes back and plays well. There's still uncertainty because this is his last year of his contract.
Right. And he's getting those core pieces are aging.
Is he like 29 or 30? He's 29. So an offensive lineman can play a while. So it would be more, do the Colts think he's playing at a high enough level to get that third contract?
Right.
And again, that's something they've got to decide. You already let Ryan Kelly and Will Fries go for obvious reasons. So its continuity is really good. But again, as we talked about previously, they have taken measures with Bortolini and Gonzalez, but it's so hard to pass up quality elite linemen. The only argument I've got is when and you've got him on here, Tyler Banks is a guy that a lot of people have projected the Colts taking. What is he, a tackle or
Tyler Booker?
Tyler? I'm sorry, Tyler Booker
Yeah.
out of Alabama. And their comments are this would give the Colts one of the NFL's best guard tandems.
Whoop-de-doo.
I'm thinking, and that's worth how many touchdowns a game?
Yeah.
I understand the rationale. Jonathan Taylor would love him, and I understand that. But this league is about
playmakers.
It's playmakers, and that's not just on offense. Maybe it's a safety, maybe it's your defensive end, maybe it's DeForest Buckner. But doggone it, you could only have. You've already got arguably the best guard in the league, and you'll have Quentin Nelson for another, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, and that's probably conservative. I'm from the Tom Moore or the Howard Mudd school of offensive linemen. You find 2 tackles, you find a center, which he did with Jeff Saturday, and then you just kind of
figure it out after that, right?
You figure it out at guards. And again, please, all you guards, don't send me hate mail. This is Howard Mudd's, working on my brain. So I just question whether it's value to invest in a guy that you really project as a guard.
Especially, because in a little bit, roster construction, picking such tight ends, offensive linemen in such high spots for the Colts has kind of gotten into a little bit of a crunch,
right?
Because, these guys are end up being big picks. They ended up making a lot of money at the baseline. They ended up being good, which you do want, and then you need to give them a second contract, and those prices, the line always goes up.
And you've got that coming with Bernie.
Right. And that's coming up. They've got to figure out, what they want to pay Bernie at left tackle.
And they will pay Bernie at left tackle.
And then this is Mimbu's RAS score. He is also an elite athlete, 9.9 out of 10 off that RAS score for him. You are listening to the Colts Blue Zone Podcast on Fox 59 now. Thanks for joining us on your podcast listening device of choice or on YouTube. All right, and so after Mimbu, the other another option, we were just talking about Tyler Booker from Alabama, 6'5", 321 pounds. He was All-American last season at left guard, projected to be the top guard in the draft, immediate starter, and there's really not a whole lot of knocks on this particular player.
You hear the term safe pick.
Absolutely. Not a generational talent by any stretch of the imagination, but probably not in the Quentin Nelson mold at guard, perhaps, but very, very good in him. And I'll tell you one thing that surprised me about him, Mike, and this is when we go to the relative athletic score for him, it's sub 4. It's 3.68.
Is that right?
Yeah. Now, again, relative athletic score does not mean everything in the world, but it can be a little bit of a guide. He gets dinged for speed and explosiveness, which is not as important at the guard position as it is for tackle, but that is an awfully, awfully low score for the RAS.
I would think we kind of joke about the Colts and their RAS, but those guys are normally in the upper 9s.
Yeah, and usually, like if there's a borderline case between two guys, it's always going to go to the elite athlete. So, and it may just depend, like he may have not measured well at the combine. Maybe when they look at the tape, they're like, this guy can hold up to anybody. He's a great inline blocker. He can just road grade guys. And that may certainly be the case. But as far as you look at the RAS, he is an outlier compared to the other guys that we have looked at here. So Kelvin Banks Jr., he's from Texas, another guard, 6'5", 315 pounds, 3-year starter at Texas. Like I said, the number 2 guard here in the draft. Can you guess the ding on Mr. Banks?
No.
Arm length. Not long enough arms.
Braden Smith had short arms too.
Right. And Braden Smith's been, I'm not sure, but he's been a pretty decent tackle.
Pretty good tackle.
You look at him, he's got, not as good of an RAS as
I'm
Campbell
looking
or
forward next week. I'm sure Dave will come back with his RAS, RAS team.
He's going to have his all-RAS draft either this week or next week. But Kelvin Banks Jr., 8.27 there. on the RAS score. So just because we were doing position there, I wanted to kind of compare those guys and kind of see what those
Interesting.
were. And I thought Booker's, because I was talking about with somebody in the newsroom a couple of weeks ago about Booker and his brother covers Alabama football. And he's like, this guy is a beast. You can go get him. I'm like, listen, I understand that, but have you seen the RAS score? And he couldn't believe that that's what it was. And so some guys just sometimes don't test all that well. So
Right.
you can't put all your eggs in one basket on that. But it just was interesting to me that was such an outlier.
It's part of their due diligence, and it's not a coincidence that most of their guys are high on the charts. A couple of years ago, weren't all of those guys, like 3 or 4 of them, were the best at their position, and one guy was the best since they started doing RAS, or one of the top 5. So,
and it's something that definitely figures into the Colts evaluations, and we've kind of gotten onto that, and it is proven that there's usually a guy or two over the last couple of years in the draft that we're like, we think we're going to pick this guy because, yes, he's good at his position. He's got a decent evaluation, but his score's so good that's why we think that they're going to pick him.
I think that would certainly be one of the factors when you get in the later rounds too.
Oh, for sure.
If you need some kind of a break point on why we take this guy over that guy, that's probably one of them.
I'm pretty convinced that's why they took Adonai Mitchell. He had a really big RAS score, and it wasn't as big as Mitchell's score, but Anthony Gould had a pretty good RAS score as well. And when you're talking about positions, especially that are athletic and explosive, then that certainly has got to factor into the calculation for that. All right, let's talk cornerback real quick, Mike. This is Will Johnson out of Michigan. I saw him pop up in a couple of, or maybe just one draft. Mock draft for the Colts. Do you think they'd go get another corner
in round 1?
Round 1. I just don't see it. Like, I know that maybe we're not the most knowledgeable people when it comes to the Colts or whatever, but sometimes I don't know if the national guys know the team very well.
Right.
But like you've got Juju Brents, and I know that is something that's the Colts are still waiting to work on. You've got Jalen Jones back there, and they signed Charvarius Ward. You've got Kenny Moore there at nickel. You've still got Womack there. Like, it's not a perfect DB room by any stretch of the imagination, but I feel like they're pretty good at corner for now. Like, not that they're not going to take another guy in the draft. I don't see that as a first round need. And then especially,
but that's why I say what they did in free agency, it sort of lowered that need in the draft. I mean, don't go out. It makes, with the way this roster is built and the way you build a roster, it just doesn't make much sense to me, with all the other needs you still have, that you invest what you did in Ward and say, oh, by the way, we're going to get one in the first round too.
Exactly.
I just think this roster isn't to the point that you can have that.
Because that becomes a luxury at that point. Exactly. Exactly. And also a couple of things about Johnson. He had missed a few games last season with turf toe, and he also missed his pro day because of a hamstring injury, which just made me think of, unfortunately, of Mr. Brent's there. You don't want to get a banged up corner and bring in another banged up
I hope
cornerback.
Juju comes in and he's had his injuries out of the way.
I hope he comes in and kills it this year, man.
Right.
Because I like the kid, and he has shown so many great flashes. It's just you got to stay healthy. Got to be on the field.
Again, as I say, he's missed more time than Richardson has, and we're all over Richardson
because he's the quarterback,
because he can't stay on the field.
Right. And you're absolutely right about that. And then also you mentioned Jihad Campbell a little bit earlier. He is a linebacker out of Alabama.
He would step in and be your weak side linebacker.
Right. He is the top-rated linebacker in the draft in most draft evaluations, 6'3", 235 pounds. Really not too many negative things to say about Campbell.
He likely will be there at 14.
He's going to probably be there. He is regarded as the best linebacker in the draft. He did have a surgery on a torn labrum after the combine, which would also probably put him at 14 as well in some teams' respects. I mean, a labrum's not he's not a quarterback or anything like that, so it's not a career ender or anything like that you would be too awfully concerned about. But you also don't like guys coming fresh off surgery that you're going to have to play immediately either.
Right.
And then we'll round out some of these mock draft guys with another linebacker, really more of an edge, kind of a hybrid player out of Alabama. I saw him pop up on a couple of lists. Jalen Walker, 6'1", 243 pounds. kind of considered the number 2 edge in the draft. Speed rusher, good guy off the edge, but kind of the knock on him is he might be a little undersized, and
Right.
he's the what's the Penn State guys? Abdul from
Carter.
Carter from Penn State. He's the top edge guy,
Right.
and this is the guy that's a step beneath him. And then there's another guy out of Georgia. His first name's Michael. I can't remember right now. Maybe Williams. But anyway, there's another guy from
Right.
Georgia that's an edge that I've seen, not in the recent ones, but back a little bit, that the Colts might be interested in, that some of the analysts think they might be. Because for certain, with the departure of Odangbo and, the uncertain development of Latu and Chris Ballard's history of drafting edge rushers.
And what you're going to get out of Samson Ebukam.
Right, and not knowing what Ebukam's actually what I was thinking of, and not knowing exactly what's going to go on there. A lot of people think that perhaps the Colts will go for an edge, and if you've got a premium player to premium position that's available there at 14, again, if you think that you've got another tight end that's later down the board that you think you can get, even if you have to trade up in the second round to make sure you get your guy, then maybe you do take some of those things.
One thing I noticed, and you've got it on here next, is these top 30 visits.
Yeah.
And you see them pop up, and what I've seen is a couple guys, defensive end edge rusher James Pierce, Texas A&M edge rusher Shamar Stewart. He's ranked like 25 overall.
Okay.
By like Kuiper. And then Texas quarterback Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, I just thought that was such a weird. I mean, the Colts have kind of a need now for getting a guy. They need more in the quarterback room because they've let Ellinger go. They're obviously not going to bring Flacco back, and so it's pretty much your Daniel Jones and Jason Bean and Anthony Richardson right now. So, but Ewers is kind of it's interesting because it doesn't really fit the mold of what the Colts are like. Some things do. He's got a pretty decent arm. He's got some pretty good accuracy.
Sam Ellinger revisited?
He's got some pretty good mobility. He's not as good of a runner as Sam. Like, Sam was kind of a poor man's Anthony Richardson in some respects. Like, Sam can move. Like, he's not going to beat a lot of people in a foot race, but, like, he's got great mobility. He can move. Ewers has good mobility, but he's not got the kind of the sneakiness, I guess, that Sam had.
The question is, again, with 7 picks, do you think they take a quarterback in the fourth round, fifth round?
His projection is probably second day, and most people have him going in the third round.
I couldn't do that. If I'm the Colts, I couldn't do that.
Not when you've got 2 young guys already in your quarterback room.
Well, but you mean with Richardson and Jones, but Jones, it's a 1-year deal.
That's true. That's true.
So, and Richardson,
who knows, right?
We will do a full podcast sometime. Again, he's got to be the guy.
Right. If he's not,
he's got to be the long-term guy. Or everything else is just that. I could argue that if Richardson's not the right guy, taking a developmental quarterback in the 5th round means nothing.
Yeah, I
don't know. I think they will take a quarterback 5th round. Again, Ellinger was a 6.
Right, 6th round pick for Sam.
And he was fine. He didn't get a great chance here for a lot of reasons. But I look at the roster and I think, man, I could, instead of bringing in a quarterback who won't play at least until next year, wouldn't you need an offensive lineman? Wouldn't you need another safety? Wouldn't you need? So we'll see. But I really think they take a quarterback at some point on third.
And he was a 3-year starter at Texas. They had a spread offense, a lot of RPO stuff. So that fits kind of what the Colts do on the RPO stuff. But he's a 5th and 7th, depending upon the evaluation, whichever website you look at, whether it's the NFL.com draft evaluation or CBS Sports or the Beast or whatever. So kind of a mid-round quarterback prospect there for the Colts. And if they wanted him, they'll probably be able to get him, but they have to do it in the 3rd or 4th round. It just seems like a too much of a commodity to spend on that.
When, like I said, when I could argue, man, that safety room, even with Bynum, it's still thin.
Yeah.
Now maybe they bring Julian Blackman back. He's still out there.
I thought he had a visit with somebody.
Yeah, but he's not.
Didn't sign. I
right.
don't think.
Was it Philly or I don't know who it
Yeah,
was.
Philly or Carolina or
But
somebody.
you still got areas of guys that can help you right away. They need linebacker. I could argue 2 linebackers.
Yeah, 100%.
So they need a running back. They need a young running back. So I would understand the rationale behind a day 3 quarterback, but with it like how deep this draft is with running backs, you can get probably a pretty good running back.
We didn't even touch on running backs, right, which is another. I mean, I know that the Colts have signed Khalil Herbert, and that's going to be a big addition for them. But you're still going to need that third guy. Somebody's going to get banged up.
Right.
You could always use a guy who's an exceptional pass catcher, and there are guys like that in the draft for us to talk about a little bit more in the weeks to come. So, Mike, where do you see it? And we'll talk about this some more. Where do you see kind of Chris Ballard's mindset of where you think he views their biggest need? Is it really tight end right now?
If I were doing a mock positional draft, round 1 tight end, round 2 offensive lineman,
okay,
or linebacker, maybe linebacker, round 2 linebacker, which they've had some decent success. Shaq Leonard was pretty good guy, and then offensive line in round 3. And then we'll see. Then you start trying to fill holes with the best player available.
Right.
That's so. But I just have to focus on. I'm guilty of getting tunnel vision, and I remember back in 2016 they needed a center so bad, and everyone had really Ryan Kelly mocked to him. It just made too much sense. Tight end makes too much sense. One of these 2 guys will be there. And if you believe, like we said, the third or fourth guy is I hate to use the word good enough because that means you're settling.
Right.
And you can't. They're in no position to settle.
Not settling, but if your evaluation is not that different between these 2 guys,
then you trust your evaluation.
Right.
To heck with what everybody else says. We've got this guy higher. Then you do it, but they've got to come out of this draft with a difference-making tight end, which was what Chris Ballard said at the owners' meetings. Do we have a difference maker? No. And he said they haven't had one since Jack Doyle. And in my
big play Jack, right?
But
he was so good.
In my mind, Jack was like the bottom of what a difference maker is. But you had to have him. He was so valuable. I always joked, if it's 3rd and 7, you throw it to Jack.
Yeah, he's gonna
he was a blocker. He wasn't the explosive play guy, but the fact that they haven't been able to replace Jack is just
it shows how much of a Swiss Army knife.
Right.
But
it shows you how they've been chasing that position, and so they come out of this draft with a quality tight end and a legitimate offensive lineman and a linebacker. Then we'll see what else they need.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me, Mike. And that'll wrap it up for this edition of the Colts Blue Zone Podcast. Dave should join us next week. For Dave Griffiths and Mike Chappell, I'm Matt Adams. Thanks for watching.